Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have a very special guest, Bianca. Thank you so much, Bianca, for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Heidi. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to share your story. So you can go ahead and just introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do, and then we get right into childhood.
Sure. So my name is Bianca Alba. I'm a proud first-gen Latina from the heart of South America, which is Cochabamba, Bolivia. I was born in Bolivia, but I was raised all my life in the States in the DMV, which is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. But now I currently reside in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So wepa to any Boricuas listening. I always say I have been here already 8 years, which is crazy because it does not feel like it. So I'm not Puerto Rican by blood, but always a little piece of my heart is going to always be part of this island. I work my 9 to 5 in public health. I'm a proud, again, like I said, first gen. I went to school to get my master's in public health, but I love to travel. And so I also have a podcast called This Latina Travels, and I'm the founder and creator behind that. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I didn't know that the DC, Maryland, Virginia area was actually referred to as DMV. So I'm learning that today.
Yes. And everybody, whenever I say like DMV, that's why I always say DC, Maryland, Virginia, because they look at me, they're like the DC motor pool. And I was like, no. But again, see, not everybody knows.
No, I didn't know that. So learn something new already right off the jump from this interview. Awesome. So talk to us. How was it growing up in that area?
Sure. So I came to this country when I was a baby, 6 months to be exact. So Northern Virginia was always home. And, we grew up on the more like the poverty line. And so like, even though Fairfax is a very rich county, it's a majority, well, now it's changed. It's very diverse, but growing up, like I was definitely the minority. But it was definitely different because, for me, like all my friends around me always had money. Their parents had the jobs, had the cars. We did not. So, I'm a proud, recipient of the free reduced lunch program. I'm the oldest of 4. My mom like did everything that she could to make means work. Like we grew up, yes, with my dad in the picture, but he wasn't really present. And that definitely was something that I always remember because although like, he physically was there sometimes, like he wasn't a present father figure. And so my childhood was a bunch of emotions to sum it up, sometimes there, sometimes not there. And then being a family of 4 girls, like it was a lot, and being the oldest, like I think you put a lot of pressure on yourselves. So for me, like I always knew success equaled going to college. Like that was what was embedded in me. That was what my goal was. So I was very lucky to be part of this program called EIP, Early Identification Program, which is a college-bound program. And it was specifically for the university that I went to, George Mason University. So shout out to EIP because they were the program that really embedded me with the resources and the tools to make it through middle school, high school, to know about college, how to apply, how to even go about it. And through that's how I ended up going to a university on a full ride tuition. But I always tell myself like it was, something that I always had it in my mind that I had to do good in school, that I could not like I couldn't party, I couldn't go out, like, and we didn't even have the money to do that, to be honest. So like it was like even though I grew up in an area that was safe, I couldn't go to bowling or shopping with my friends because it was like I can't ask my mom for money that she doesn't have. So it was definitely I think all those things have played a toll where I am now, because now I use my platform to talk about finances, to talk about like how we can, build generational wealth, like how we can travel, like how I've traveled to 6 out of the 7 continents, but I'm not a millionaire. So it's like, and that's what I really push, like people, especially women and Latinas who look like me, like, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to have the perfect job or have everything figured out to, work and heal on yourself.
Oh my goodness. I love that so much. So I kind of want to get into that program that you mentioned. So did it start in middle school to like help you guys go through and then be able to get into the university?
Yeah, so EIP is a program that you are kind of like selected to get into if you meet the criteria, which most of the criteria is being a first gen. And so they pick you like, and it's like in Virginia specifically because it's based for the university. So I know that there's a lot of college bond programs throughout the country, but this one specifically for George Mason University. So yeah, so I entered in 7th grade, but 8th grade was when like officially everything started. And so what this program consists of is like you have to go to like mandatory tutorings weekly. You have to participate in their events that they have. So they always have like events for FAFSA, and teaching your parents too, which is a really big component. And another thing that is a requirement is to attend their summer academies. So every year, every summer, while some of my friends were out vacationing, like I would be in quote summer school, not because I had bad grades, but because I was in this program that required like 4 weeks of my summer. And basically in that program, like during those 4 weeks, they would kind of prep you for your following year. So to give you like an advance of like, oh, if you're going into 9th grade, you would take like biology over the summer just to kind of like prepare you for that. So I, of course, because again, my mindset was like, well, this program is going to be the key. It's going to be the way for me to gain these resources, to gain, these opportunities. So I took it really seriously from the beginning. Like I knew like, okay, once I get into this program, like I'm going to do everything that I can because the outcome was a potential full ride. And it was interesting now I even reflect about it and the friends that I made, like those were the first like Latino friends that I ever made. And because we were all first gen and came from different backgrounds, different, steps of life, but we all, had that one commonality that we were going to be the first in our families to go to college. And I remember like, they would tell me like, oh, Bianca's the smart one. She's going to get the scholarship. She's going to get the scholarship. But when it came down to it, yes, of course, I think I'm smart, but I was more hardworking than anything. And I think that's, yes, determined. And I think that's the big thing. And especially with first gen Latinas, I think that's what defines us, like our ganas. And my ganas were to get this full ride. And that's what happened.
Yeah. So college, was it diverse for you, or were you also again the minority in college?
No, so I went to a really diverse institution. So George Mason University is probably actually one of the top diverse institutions in the nation. And that's honestly why I went. Like, even though they gave me a full ride, it was because of the diversity. Like I wanted to go to a university that made me feel like I was part, because, I grew up in Fairfax where I didn't feel like I, was part of this community. Like in my high school, because we were so big too, my graduating class was over 700 students, like, so I didn't feel like I had community. I didn't have the Latino like niche. Like I had like 2 or 3 friends that looked like me, but like at least when I went to college, it was completely different. And it was also like a culture shock in other things, right? Because that was the first time where I moved on campus. I lived on my own, right? Because I was like, I told myself, I was like, nope, like if I go to school this close, because the school was really close to my mother's house at the time, I was like, I'm not living at home. Like I will do everything in my power to get that college experience, because I think that's so important. And I get there's financial, setbacks and stuff, but it was the best thing that I could have done for myself to grow as a person. So definitely I felt like college was the years that I grew, but that I also like learned so much. And I was just teaching myself, like, because no one had told me that you had to go to school, you had to push yourself to go to class, you have to work, you have to deal with the society norms. I think that was the first time I had a real boyfriend, a real like circle of friends, the party atmosphere. So it's a lot of challenges. But I definitely appreciated my college years in a diverse institution.
And did you always know that you wanted to get into public health?
No, I didn't. So I initially, like most, I think first gen wanted to do something in like the medical field. And so for me, it was like embedded that I was going to be either a doctor or a lawyer. And what I mean by that,
Oh
it's
my
like, it
gosh.
wasn't, yes, it wasn't like my mom sat me down and was like, vas a ser doctora o abogada, that's it. No, it was never that pressure, but again, being, I think, the oldest, you feel that pressure because that's
Yeah.
what we're taught. That's what we see on media, on TV at the
Yeah.
time. Like it's like that's the only thing that equals success. And I did not want to be a lawyer, so I knew that off the hand. And my thing has always been about people. Like I've always worked with people, done community service. That's what I grew up on. And so I was like, you know what? I think being a doctor is going to be my thing. But then, college came, reality came. And when you take 3 or 4 science classes, like it humbles you. Needless to say, like I learned real quick that I, could not do this because it was just a lot. It was like
Yeah.
my brain could not capture all this. And not to say that, I wasn't smart enough, but it was just like, I couldn't handle the amount of information and I started losing that interest. And so I decided to go to nursing or go that route. But again, it was kind of like the same thing. And I was just like, I just don't want to be in a career where I'm constantly fighting. Like that's what I felt like in
Mm.
med school. Like if I was going the med school route or the nursing route, I felt like that I would be constantly fighting to get this position or to prove myself because, you have to
Mm.
apply for this. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I already proved myself enough getting into college and getting into college for free. Like, what else do I need to prove? So I think my mindset really like hit in when I started taking like global health and epidemiology classes. And that's where I was like, you know what, I can do this. This is what I can do. And I had my time frame still with my scholarship. So I decided just to stick with my bachelor in science and public health and go that route.
Gotcha. Okay. So you said that you came, well, your mom brought you when you
Mm-hmm.
were 6 months. So all you know or knew growing up was the United States. When were you able to visit Bolivia? Hi, Heidi here. Thank you so much for listening and supporting my podcast, but most importantly, the mission. If you would like to further support this podcast, there are a few ways you can do that. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll receive the episodes straight to your inbox every time they drop. The link is in the show notes and the show description. You can subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel. And lastly, you can donate money. That link is also in the show notes and show description. If you would like to sponsor an episode or promote your business on this show, send me an email at Heidi@HeidiDeLaCruz.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So we didn't go back to Bolivia till 11 years later. So just trying to picture it, my mom came here with me. She was around 17 or 18. She didn't go back to her country till 11 years later. So I vividly remember that because I was the oldest. I was 11 years old,
Yeah.
and my younger sisters were all they were young. Like I had my 9-year-old sister, and then my 2 younger sisters were 1 and 2. And we all went, and my dad at the time was still with my mother, so we all went together. And I'll never forget that trip because one, like we didn't travel, because we didn't have money.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest things. And Bolivia isn't 1 flight or 2 flights. Like it's a journey, and it's very expensive to fly and to get there. And then the other thing that people don't think about is like once you get to Bolivia, if you're coming from the United States, you're kind of expected to be the one to pay for everything, right? For like
Wow.
for like the dinners and all that stuff, because that's just, you're coming from the United States. So hence you're coming with the one with
Yeah.
the money. And I
Yeah.
think that goes with all our Latin American countries. So I'm
Mhm.
sure that was a big reason. And then the other big reason was our paper status. Like my mom did, se puso las pilas, how we say, she was on it when we moved here officially. She got our green cards like within the first couple years that we were here. And
Wow.
then so thanks to that, like that's why were able to go. But I think the biggest factor wasn't even our paper status, it was just the money. Like
Mm.
really, like the money. I've always remember growing up just being really like, struggling. And so I think like when we finally made that decision to go, it was an opportunity that both my parents had at the time. But it was very different. Like my mom saw her brothers and sisters that she left like 11 years later.
Prior. Yeah.
So they were, yeah, prior. So they were a whole different, age range. My grandparents were much older. And for me, it was such a culture shock in many ways, but one, like to meet like my family for the first time. You talk to these individuals over the phone with with a telephone card, the scratch off for so
Yes.
many years, that you finally get to meet them in person and to see how their lifestyle is and how different it is, because Bolivia is a very poor and humble country, but there's also so much beauty. And my grandparents at the time were living like right in the city, and so it was also like very different than what I'm used to living in the Fairfax, not rural, but like it's more like of a suburban, like, little townhouses like set up, where here you go living in Cochabamba, like the big city where you hear nonstop noises. It was definitely different for an 11-year-old.
Yeah. So it sounds like that trip definitely was impactful for you, but in a good way.
Yes, no, very impactful. One that I always will cherish and remember. And more so to see like my mom, like I'll never forget, like, her being able to hug her mother for the first time
Oh man.
after 11 years. Like I get to, like, when I think about it now, of course, I get even more emotional as an
Mhm.
adult, but like when I was a kid, like I was just like so over it. Cause you
Yeah.
flew all this time, and like, let me picture, right? I'm the oldest and my two sisters youngers are babies. So my dad like was juggling carrying all the suitcases, because remember, like, you got your money's worth back in the day. You were able to check in 2 bags per
Per
person.
person.
Yes, now I think they charge you, like it's yeah, these
Yeah.
airlines have gotten horrendous. But before, like 2 bags, a carry-on, a backpack, so 4 of us or 5 of us, like it was a hot mess. So I just remember getting to the airport and I was like, this is it. And just seeing, but now reflecting, seeing my mom like hug her mom, hug her brother, her sister, like I can't imagine how she must have felt. Like I now
Yeah.
get goosebumps and cry about it. But it's definitely a surreal and for real moment that we take kind of for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you visit now?
Not as often as I should. I definitely want to a lot more. It's just like I said, it's not even now the money. What's hard is just the time. Like it
Now is the
takes,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now like I don't want to just go there for a couple days. Like I want to go there for at least a week and a half.
Yeah.
And there's just so much more, like so many like things that come into play when traveling to Bolivia. But I definitely want to go more often. The last trip that I did was a big trip for me, because I was able to take my family to Bolivia, to a different part that we're not used to
Mhm.
going, because that's the other
Yeah.
thing. When you go to your home country, you usually just go to see family, and
Yes.
of course that's it. But no, this time around, I got to take my family to El Salar de Uyuni, which is the Salt Lakes of Bolivia.
Oh.
I always tell people that it should be a wonder of the world, because it is gorgeous. Like if you Google Bolivia Salt Lakes, you literally, like, the pictures don't look real. It literally means that where heaven touches earth, because that's how it looks like. Like you're looking like you're walking in clouds. So I was able to splurge and take my family to El Salar de Uyuni and stay there for 2 nights. And that was beautiful. Like I was like, yes, I want to do something that's not just family related. So we were able to do that all together. But that was the last time I went. So I want to go back, because there's just so much to see. And I want to, be able to cherish now those moments with my
Yeah.
my family members there as an adult.
Yeah, for sure. And is your mom still living here in the United States?
She is, yeah. So she
Okay.
still lives here in Virginia, but most of her family is back in Bolivia.
Back in Bolivia. So talk to us about moving to Puerto Rico. Like how did that come about?
Yes. So that came about because of my job. So my old job. So I used to work for CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So when the Zika outbreaks happened here on the island, I was deployed here to work because they needed Spanish fluent speakers. So my 30 to 60-day deployment led me to this full-time job here on the island. So I always tell people my experience of moving here was definitely a unique one and a privileged one.
Yeah.
Because I had my job. My job paid for my move. My job moved me here, but I moved here also during a very difficult time. I moved here 2 weeks after the devastating Hurricane Maria. So it was,
Wow.
yeah, so it was a very a reality check for me. Like I moved here literally with 8 people on my flight.
Wow.
And when I landed, I'll never forget the desperation of people trying to leave the island. Because remember, it was just 2 weeks, and that hurricane devastated the island. Like
The
there was
whole
no
island.
power. Yeah, there was no power or water for weeks, for months, for even some locations were looking for years. Like it was really horrible. And so to be able to be there was for me like an honor, but also like I knew that what I was getting myself into was going to be hard because
Yeah.
I didn't have a home. Like I had to stay thankfully in a hotel, but I had to find like my resources and stuff. But again, I had a job, so that was also the key thing. But my job moved me here, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience also because it was my first official real career transition for public health. So I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And I ended up changing agencies because I needed to, something just one for my career growth, but also for my mental health.
And so, the hurricane aside, what cultural
Mhm.
shock did you experience when you moved to Puerto Rico?
Oh, the language.
The like,
Like I always tell people, Caribbean, Puerto Rican, Dominicans, everyone speaks Spanish 10 times fold. Like I consider myself, I am a Spanish fluent
yeah,
speaker, but el español aquí is so diferente. And now my Spanish, because I've been living here 8 years, my mom's like, oh, you're speaking very Boricua. And I'm just like, well, I've had to adapt because half the time, like either I couldn't understand, and it's because people speak here so fast,
yeah.
or they cut certain letters off.
Yes, we do. I mean,
Yes,
I'm
and so
Dominican, so I know.
yes,
Yes, we do the
so
same thing.
so I'm always just, so the first couple years I'll never forget, like I was like, man, am I really not that fluent? Like I honestly was like questioning my Spanish for a while, but it was just the Spanish speaking. But that's in every also like not language, but that's
Yeah.
in every Spanish, like different country, like dialects are different, words are
Yes.
different, meanings are different. So it's just
Yep.
an adjustment. And then the big other culture shock was just the lack of resources.
Mm.
I was, and I am a very, I use my platforms to always talk about the discrepancies here in Puerto Rico, how there's a difference with vacationing versus living here, how, a lot of the systems are made, I feel, to really kick people from Puerto Rico out because it is
Yeah.
just left and right, the discrepancies with the healthcare systems, education systems, the salary differences, a
Yeah.
bunch of things. So that was definitely eye-opening too. I don't think I would have never really known if I had not lived here and been seeing this like firsthand, and
Yeah.
after disaster, because it wasn't just Maria, like it's been Hurricane Fiona, it's been the earthquakes, it's been so many things that I've been here as like a first responder firsthand and seen. And so it hurts because I love this island. Like I said, I'm not, Puerto Rican, but there's a piece of me that I always advocate, and I'm always going to be for the community, and just wish like, more people would know, because I'm just like, yep, this is still part of the United States. And
It
there's
is.
just,
Yeah.
there's so many things that, people here don't get what people in the States get.
Yeah. So what keeps you there?
Yeah, what keeps me here, it's like I said once, like it's something about the just the culture and the vibe, like the simple like gestures, like the buenos dias, the buen
Oh, yeah.
provecho, people
Yeah.
opening your door, people calling me bella, like, and not
Oh,
meaning in not meaning in like
yeah.
a derogatory way, right? Because like my partner, and like he's not Puerto Rican, and when we go out and we eat and like the waiter comes and que tú quieres bella, and but it's like just the culture, just the
Yeah.
warmth that, and I love it, and I'm always going to be that proponent. Like I'm like, this is what really keeps me here is the community, and of course the weather. I'm allergic to the cold now. Anything below 50 degrees, like
It's
I am,
freezing.
yes, I am freezing and I'm over here shaking. Yeah, no, so definitely the weather. I love the warmth and I love just the culture and the people. The community really makes me stay here.
Oh, beautiful. So let's talk about your podcast, This Latina Travels. So how did that start and why?
Yeah, so I started TLT, This Latina Travels, in 2021. So it was during the pandemic, and it was honestly an outlet that I wanted to do because I was just so stressed with my job.
Mm,
Remember, at the time I was working for CDC, and CDC was in the forefront of COVID.
yes.
So I did not have a life. I was working like 80-hour weeks. I was deployed left and right from New York to Maryland to Ponce, Puerto Rico, everywhere. Like they had me everywhere. So I needed something to do that was not work related because I
Yeah.
really felt like I was going crazy. Like I was like, this is not okay. I need to do something that is for me.
Yeah.
And I've always been good at documenting like my stuff, like even before like podcast blew up or before like COVID, like I used to post like in my Facebook, my personal like pictures of all my trips and stuff. But I always told myself, like, I was like, I really want to like put this somewhere. And I feel like I have a really good like storytelling voice and stuff. And so
Yeah.
talking to one of my sorority sisters on the island, she's a podcast. Well, now she's a podcast editor. But before she was just a video editor and stuff. And we were just chit chatting. And she's like, you should start a podcast. And I was like, you know what? I think I am. Like, why not? And so one thing led to the other. And I really wanted to create this platform that, focused on my stories firsthand, but also just like sharing tricks and tips on how you can make it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, like you don't have to be a millionaire to travel. You don't have to be, in a relationship. A lot of people think, especially in the stigma of being Latina, that you need to travel with somebody at all times. Like I traveled solo all over the world, and it was
Wow.
such a beautiful feeling. Like it's so like it grew me and it healed me. Like, and I always tell people like traveling solo really healed my soul. And so my podcast is a little bit of all that. Like it's a mix of like how to get there, like let me show you like all these beautiful countries and places that I've been, and how you can get there, because I think that's the most important thing, is just sharing this with the community and letting them know that, if I can do it, you can
You can
too.
do it too. Yeah, I love that. And so where can people listen to your podcast?
Sure. I'm on all major platforms, but the biggest ones are Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And it's literally This Latina Travels.
Okay, perfect. So I'll definitely include your link in the show notes and the show description so people can follow you. I love asking this last question. So wrapping up, and it's I love asking because it's so different to everyone and so unique to their story and everything. So, what does the American dream mean to you?
Mm, that's a definitely deep question. I feel like
Yeah.
10 years ago, that answer would have been like, it's the land of opportunity. It's the land of dreams. But I think now, like fast forward, being where I am today, I think the American dream has changed so much. And in that sense that I say, like, there's just so many like culture differences, but not even just culture, but just like living differences, right? Like I feel like living in the United States is not how it was 10 or 20 years ago when our parents came. So for me, like the American dream now is honestly like teaching about like generational wealth, teaching about like things that can fill your soul completely. And so like that's what I like want to envision the American dream. The American dream to giving opportunities to everybody. But I know it's definitely changed, because for me, I mean, growing up, to me, I always would say, oh, the American dream is why my parents came here, the opportunities, the dreams. But it's just changed so much now. And I think unfortunately, and fortunately, it gives us, millennials and Gen Zers and everybody who goes on afterwards the opportunity to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer. Thank you so much. And how can people connect with you?
Sure. Like they can find, it's first, I would say sign up for my newsletter. So my website is thislatinaTravels.com. That's where I send like all the juice, all the tea, and the first like things of like what, I have going on. But I'm on all major platforms on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, what is the other one? TikTok, This Latina Travels. Like literally you could just look me up.
Perfect. Again, I will include all your links in the show notes and the show description. And Bianca, thank you so much for today, for your time, for sharing. I learned so much from your story today, and I appreciate and I love what you're doing with, traveling yourself and getting all that experience, but then also sharing with the world, sharing the tips and letting other people know that if you can do it, they can do it too.
Yes. Thank you for having me.